Hi. Oh, okay. It looks like I'm live. So, I was on a Zoom a few days ago. It was a bunch of people. It was very interesting. Um, and Christopher Ernst mentioned that this Sufi center had been constructed in Walnut Creek. It is a devotee of Meher Baba. The name of the place is Sufism Reoriented. And as you could say, it is this very exciting, I don't know where my pencil is, very exciting looking kind of architectural symbolism here. It looks a little bit more kind of like a spaceship, mothership with pods coming off it or something. Very dramatic. I really don't know much about this organization or about anything that they're doing. I was, except for it looks like they have a ton of money. But other than that, I was fascinated to learn about this because I lived actually just up the road for about 17 years. And I had no idea that this particular building had gone up. So I looked it up and saw the location of it. And that made me want to talk to you about geomancy, how certain ritual structures, which may be overtly or not so overtly ritual structures, can be sited in the landscape to take advantage of, let's say, natural energy flows, natural features, historical events, and also the built landscape as it is used by humans. So I don't think that I would have picked up on a lot of these things that I think they are trying to take advantage of with where this is located if I had not lived in this area for such a long time. So I wanted to talk to some of you about it and get this. This is going to be kind of a crappy looking presentation because I'm not good with the computer stuff. But I think some of you, for example, Sarah Schick is looking at the hidden brick situation in Mother Joseph and all these buildings that were put in specific areas on the landscape. And this may be an example that hopefully helps you get into the idea of looking at some of these things and getting an idea about whether or not you agree with it or not. That this is something that can be happening, but some of these ways that spiritual groups can use activities, structures to leverage these already existing energy flows to amplify their own message or accomplish their own means. So here is a picture that you can see my high-tech approach here that I printed off of Google Maps or whatever the heck of the general area where this is located. This is the Greater Bay Area here, San Francisco Bay Area. And this building is located right here near this intersection of these huge, very popular, very well-traveled, like excruciatingly, horrifyingly well-traveled highways. This is Highway 24 here, and then here we have 680. So just from the viewpoint of if you're trying to influence people who are around your area, this carries huge numbers of commuters, and they are every day. You can go there at like 4 in the morning and it's going to be packed, and it's crazy the amount of traffic that they get. And these corridors lead to very interesting areas. 680 here leads up to Sacramento, the capital of California, right? It was like the 5th largest economy in the world, very influential. Also in terms of thought, if you follow 680 down this way, it ends up in Silicon Valley. It actually is interesting too from the whole perspective. If you're trying to, let's say, leverage this spot, let's say you're meditating there a lot, doing all this services and everything, you're trying to get out your message, right? Tech, obviously, you know, the Silicon Valley, very influential. That's a brilliant way to get your message out. Also, this bypasses Niles Canyon, which was a very early area where they made a lot of movies. The Little Tramp with Charlie Chaplin, a classic, was made there in Niles Canyon. It's a gorgeous, really fun area with a lot of interesting history. Here we see 24, and it heads out here to Oakland and San Francisco and the entire Greater Bay Area. I don't have a map here of the San Francisco Bay, but you know, you have San Francisco over here, heavily influenced. Dianne Feinstein lives there. Willie Brown lives there, right? Gavin Newsom lived there, was mayor there. Very influential people. Jerry Brown, he was mayor of Oakland. He lived in Oakland for many years. He was also part of the dynasty that included 2 governors in the state of California. And then if you come down the peninsula here, you'll end up again in Silicon Valley. over here where on the floor where my shoes are or something. And then out here is the Golden Gate. Okay, so you can see where just through the movement of people, and this is going to include energy and information, right? Products, services, lots of times the cable lines, transmission lines will follow along these type of corridors, right? So if you are a spiritual group and you're trying to leverage your message this way, it's easier to follow these pre-existing pathways that kind of carry along on them. Oh, I also wanted to mention in terms of media again, I made a note up here. This is Miranda's more kind of up here. But Industrial Light and Magic, a small concern you may have heard of. You know, these Star Wars movies, George Lucas, everything, incredibly influential. And a lot of that is happening right up here. And if you come to the Golden Gate here and follow the built landscape, you're going to be going down the peninsula here to Silicon Valley, or up here via 101 through the Robin Williams Tunnel up here to Industrial Light and Magic. So, okay, so that is the kind of built landscape that they're leveraging. What about the natural landscape? Now, the first thing that I noticed over here, I used to live like right about here for 17 years. It's like 8 minutes by car to get down to the exact spot where they are. This is kind of a residential, kind of creepy, I don't know, it's not super creepy, not like a super posh neighborhood, although Walnut Creek, Lafayette, Orinda are very posh. But it's, you know, right here in this larger area of heavily influenced and very Tony expensive real estate. So, but it's kind of an area where you can buy something for a little less, I think. But what's fascinating is if you look right over here, this is Mount Diablo, this huge mountain. It looks like a volcano. It is actually an upthrust due to all the faulting here. You have the, I think it's the Greenwood Fault, runs along this way here. Here I have indicated, these are a bunch of hills here. Some people might call them mountains depending upon where you're from. And that's the Hayward Fault, hugely powerful fault. And then out past here a little ways is, of course, the very famous San Andreas Fault. So you have these faults here. They relate into the Pacific Ring of Fire, a heavily active geological area. Okay, so here it has a direct line of sight to Mount Diablo. And right along here, there's a very interesting formation called Shell Ridge. And here is a picture of it that I found. This is on Wikipedia. The big mountain in the back is Mount Diablo. This is called Shell Ridge. And you can see it is all these layers of sediment that have turned to rock. They've been tilted up and they're eroding off. It's incredibly beautiful to watch from the interchange right by where the Sufi area is. And they have a lot of shells in there, fossil shells, which is fascinating. This provides kind of, how do I want to say, it's like a through line. You can just, it just shoots right over here to Mount Diablo. And it also is carrying this heavily marine influence, which I'm going to get to in a minute because of the fossilized shells. Mount Diablo is famous in some circles, mainly the visitor center of Mount Diablo, because it is supposed to have the largest visible area from any mountain in, like, either on the North American continent or in the entire world or whatever. It all depends upon how you do it. But the reason it has this huge thing is because right out here is the Great Central Valley of California, this huge flat area. So Mount Diablo just is spectacular. It just rises up from this flat plain. You can see it from all over, all type of places, and it's kind of like an antenna. So, and you have this kind of through line of these fossilized shell deposits and layers going right here to Mount Diablo. So let's say theoretically you were trying to get things all jazzed up here and spiritual, and then kind of throwing your energy to some place where it could effectively reach a ton of people. It would be very nice to have Mount Diablo right there. Okay, so 24 heads out here to the Golden Gate. I'm going to start talking here about the natural landscape of what's going on here, the natural flows of energy. Okay, so the Great Central Valley is very hot and dry, and you get hot winds coming out from that area during the day. Pressure builds up, it heats up the air, and it starts to flow this way out towards the Golden Gate. Over here, the Pacific is very deep. It's very cold. There is a lot of it. It's like it's a huge ocean, right? So what happens is during the night or starting in the evening, you start to get winds that come from the ocean start blowing this way, and the wind has warmed up a little bit, but the ocean is very cold, and so you get what they call advection fog that moves in through the Golden Gate and just blows through here until it starts reaching these hills around here in this very important spot. And then it builds up, and then it starts to fall over these hills and then filter down into this area. Now, this is an interesting point. A lot of people talk about, for example, ley lines and lines of energy happening in the landscape. And lots of times it'll look just like a line. It'll look like a straight line. When this fog comes through the Golden Gate, it's a fascinating thing to experience. I have driven up here, this shoreline 80, this highway here, in the evening. You'll be driving along, it'll be perfectly clear. You'll hit this one spot, depending upon the exact direction of the wind, and for 1.5 miles, 2 miles, you'll just be driving through this fog, and you can see it pouring in. It's spectacular to see. And it's great for the lungs, too, all that humidity. Let's see. So it's more like this kind of like couple mile wide band of energy that is moving in. Yin, cold, watery energy that is moving, hits these line of hills where this is all earthquake fault is, and then keeps flowing over this direction. So you can see over a day how, I don't want to say, let's say this group is trying to build energy from one direction, right? And then you could either send it out this way or have it come back this way, depending upon the time of day, because of these particular natural rhythms and flows. This, yes, Josh, exactly. I watched your YouTube on Feng Shui. It was very helpful and very good. I would recommend it to anyone. And thank you for watching. So you can take advantage of these natural rhythms. Now, I want to get more into, let's say, alchemy or elemental magic and what's going on here. And then also the kind of touchy topic of necromancy and human sacrifice, which tends to come up in a lot of these type of situations. People looking at people like Bosley with Empire of the Wheel. But then also, if you look back in time archaeologically, you'll find oftentimes at these ritual complexes, people have been sacrificed. So here is a very interesting spot. This right here, let's see, first of all, these are all hills here, right, along this earthquake fault. So they have made a tunnel that goes through the hills here. It's called the Caldecott Tunnel. Interestingly enough, the dog is barking. There is right here a park called Sibley Volcanic Park, because there is an extinct volcano right here. If you were driving along 24 and you're going this way, east, on your left towards the north, you'll see these huge deposits, because they cut through to make the tunnels and stuff. You see these huge deposits of like tufa or pumice volcanic materials right here. You can see where the volcano was. Right here over this tunnel. Now, in 1982, as it happens as well, that this tunnel has a little bit of a percentage grade to it, which means that there's a draft. There is air moving through these tunnels all the time. So in 1982, they had not figured out that it would be a good idea to bar gasoline tankers from going through this tunnel. And there was a horrible accident. This gas tanker was incapacitated and leaking, and it caught on fire, and I think about 5 people died in these tunnels. It caused a lot of changes in laws and regulations about transporting this type of materials. But so you have the fire and explosion and death on top of this extinct volcano. Now, as many of you know, I'm very concerned with firestorms. The first firestorm that I saw was the 1991 Oakland firestorm. I was out, it was in October. It was a gorgeous fall day, so I was out driving around in the hills. I was over here, I think, in Moraga, and looked back this way, and I could see over the hills this huge, it's a pyrocumulus cloud, because there were firestorm conditions. There were dry winds coming from the east feeding this fire. Around here, they call them Diablo winds, right, because of Mount Diablo. Anyway, so that was completely frightening. That was a horrible fire. It burned this huge area, and here almost 3,000 houses were burned. There was about 500 apartments or condos. 25 people died right on here. And it's right on this spot that it blew up. And the official CAL FIRE name for that fire is the tunnel fire. So you have this huge yin watery energy coming here and meeting this spot where you have fault, which is of course leading down to this earth energies and the I don't want to say the fiery energies of lava and magma coming up as they did here in this volcano. And then on top of that, you have this fire and explosion in the tunnel, and then you have the firestorm in 1992, and they ended up killing a number of people in these horrible tragedies here. I would not recommend it, but you can see through, as I said, through history, through various, I don't want to say ideas about how you can work various energetic systems and everything. There is the idea of human sacrifice, and I would say that, you know, it's possible for people to commit murder on their own, but I think as well that I have no idea if these Sufism people have taken this into account, but I think there is a possibility too where you find these areas that have had these tragedies, natural tragedies, disasters, human-made disasters, and necromancers can definitely go in there and try and leverage that to see if there's any lingering trauma energy or bits of ghosts hanging around that they can recruit for their magical purposes. And it is also fascinating when you kind of follow this way, again, over to Mount Diablo, Three Shell Ridge, which is, of course, carrying this marine energy, fossilized over to here, because Mount Diablo had another firestorm that I saw in the national park there probably about 10-12 years ago, and it was another thing. It looked like a nuclear explosion. I felt terrible because of all my Tweety birds that are up there that can't fly for shit, so they were pretty much toast. But the nice thing about, or the positive thing about firestorms in the natural environment here is if they're not too hot, the environment tends to come back more in a more fertile way. And there's a lot of how do I want to say, native plants here that are dependent upon these fires. If you get the fires that burn like super hot, really scorched earth, they'll kill everything and sterilize things. But there's a lot of plants here that if it's not too intensive a fire, they'll come back gangbusters. It frees up a lot of nutrients, brings a lot more light into the area. And then you can, you'll see a lot more deer and animals and whatnot. So hopefully you guys found this interesting. I know it's not the most, kind of want to say, brilliantly technological presentation, but I couldn't figure out how to do that. And I thought you might find it interesting to get a look on this. Of course, any particular landscape is going to be having these flows and areas to it. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I will try and leave pictures of these maps in the comments so you can take a more close look at them. So thank you for watching.